This is the Code, Deploy, Go Live podcast, episode 8 with Julie Turner and Andrew Connell. This episode is available as a video on our YouTube channel, linked in the show notes. Today, Andrew and I are going to cover the latest news you should be aware of, including, yes, wait for it, yet another SharePoint Online, SharePoint Framework deprecation. I guess Microsoft 365 has their own Doge initiative, recorded alive, 6/16/2025. Hey, how are you? Don't ask how I am, because it ain't great.
I'm exhausted. I'm tired. I'm a little shocked, and I'm glad. I mean, it's almost like we picked the perfect day to record. My body says no. I got in last night around my flight landed about a little after 2 a.m. last night. And I live about 45 minutes to an hour away from the airport. So I'm going on very little sleep. Julie and I record. It's not here on June the 16th, like you said. So it's a Monday morning and it's 9 a.m. and I've had just a few hours of sleep, got a few minutes to see my wife this morning, got a few minutes to get a shower, try and get something to eat, and then try and digest some of the news that's happened so recently, which we'll talk about today. Yeah. It's
Good morning.
Yeah. Good morning. So before we dive into all that, you're the host of our show, so why don't you start with what you've been up to since we last got together?
Yeah, well, school ended, so that's a thing.
What, did you graduate?
Yes. No. No, we're in summer vacation. My son is so happy. He came home playing the oldie but goodie Celebrate Good Times on his phone. I'm like, how do you even know what this song is? He's like, oh, I'm only playing it because it's the last day of school. I'm like, okay. So that's the vibe we're going for. Got it. So yeah, last day of school, but summer really hasn't landed in New England. It was really cold this weekend, like in the 50s.
No way.
Saturday. Yeah, it was cold. So it doesn't feel like summer. We've had rain every weekend for 7 or 8 weeks. So, although it's very green and beautiful and there's lots of trees and stuff, it just doesn't feel like summer yet. So even though it's well into June, it's not feeling like it. We did open our pool finally, but it's we were in it once. It's not that warm. So it's, it's just not feeling very summery. But we did, our son is finally old enough that he can stay home for a few hours at least. And so Ken and I went out 2 nights this weekend to have dinner. And it was awesome. We were freedom. So it was sort of summer vacation for the adults too. So it's been really nice. Things are good.
And since we last got together, you were in Germany at a conference. Is that right?
Yep. Yeah, I was in Germany. We did the European Collaboration Summit, which is this huge, absolutely the biggest this year. I think 3,000 attendees. It's absolutely ginormous event. It's sort of multiple conferences in one. They do a data piece of it, cloud infrastructure type piece to it. So it's this huge conference. It's really well attended. It's super well run. I can't say enough good things about it. We had a great time, lots of great hallway conversations, lots of great attendance in sessions. So that always feels nice when you get a lot of people attending a dev session. It's just a great feeling. So really good, really, really, really good. I enjoyed it a lot. I got a little downtime in Simpraxis Iceland office with Derek and Patrick. So that was lovely. And and got home okay through Charles de Gaulle. Thought that was going to be a nightmare because Mark Rackley told me it was going to be, but it turned out fine. So
you should knock on wood because the Charles de Gaulle is that is the hey, look, here's all these gates, limited seating, really crowded. And yes, they do a great job of just not being as efficient. So you were lucky.
Yeah.
For you. So bless your heart.
I think it became lucky because there's 2 sections of the airport. And if you're flying, we'll call it domestic. That's really not the right term. But if you're flying through Europe, you come into one section and then you have to get a bus that takes you to the international terminal. Rightly so, Mark was like, that is a nightmare. We lucked out as we were the only plane who was coming in and I was sitting at the front of the plane. So I was literally the first person through passport control and then right on the bus, and the bus left in 5 minutes. So it was fine.
That's good.
But I could see it being a nightmare. I won't do that again.
For that conference, when you guys, that European Collaboration Summit, when they do that and they have the multiple shows going on at the same time, can people register? So a couple questions about that. Can people register for each one of those separately? Or could I if I was only interested in the data, could I register just for the data and it's not the other ones?
Mm-hmm.
And then,
yes.
So are they are the tracks really siloed away from each other? And is there like they chicken
Yes.
McStreet, don't go into the wrong one, or?
Yes, yes. Although I will say they checked a lot, they didn't check them all. So there was some
So kinda like
places where
Turner
I
and
just
Andrew
walked
Connell,
into yeah.
but not like
There was some sessions, the bigger sessions, they were absolutely monitoring at the door. You were scanned, and if you didn't have a ticket that let you into that session, you couldn't go into that session. But there were some of the smaller sessions, they weren't monitoring as closely, and I wasn't checked going in. So I think that it's a little loose, but not as loose as, like, oh, it's a free for all and you could just go wherever you want.
I got it. Okay, cool. That's really cool. I've wanted to do that show. The timing has not worked out. Well, it's two-part. The timing hasn't worked out for me. It's a little challenging with like
Oh, it's hugely
family stuff.
challenging. Yeah.
But it's also like I've had other reasons why I haven't been able to do it, business reason why I haven't been able to do it. But I think next year I'm really seriously like thinking about submitting for that show. I'd love to join it. With the timing between like it's always like in May-ish, and then
Yeah.
early June, there's like Microsoft does their well, sorry, not Microsoft, but it's like
Yeah.
pseudo Microsoft.
Microsoft adjacent.
Yeah. They do their M365 community conference around that time. And then another show you and I do a lot, which I guess we'll see each other next week in Seattle for TechCon
Yep.
Seattle. You're going to be in
Yep.
Seattle, right?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Yep. Definitely in Seattle.
Awesome. And if anybody else is listening to the show and they're going to be in Seattle, please come up and find us. We'd love to chat with you, find out what you like about the show, find out more importantly, I'd like to find out what you don't like about the show. And I don't know, like pay attention to what the Hoova app and also jump on our newsletter. Julie and I, we'd love, and if there's a way that we can connect, and maybe, who knows, we haven't even talked about this. I'm making this up right now. It might be a terrible idea in timing, but hey, we might do a show. We might do like a quick little, like, listener show, kind of roundtable kind of a thing. We'll see. But that's cool. That's cool. I'd love to do that show.
Yeah, next year's timing is all wonky because the Microsoft 365 Community Conference announced their dates, and their date, they moved back 2 weeks. So they're now essentially the third week in April. What I find incredibly confusing about that, as a parent of a child who lives in New Hampshire, which is school vacation for New Hampshire is an off week from what a predominant amount of the rest of the country does, which is that third week. So school vacation is that third week. And if you follow like travel prices, the prices skyrocket that week for travel, and especially to Orlando, because all the northern people who are on school vacation take their kids down to Disney World or whatever it is and, go to the theme parks. So the Microsoft 365 Community Conference is in Orlando next year on school vacation week. I guess there's a side of that could be like, oh, they'll get attendees who are going to bring their families so the families can go to the parks maybe, but the prices are going to be through the roof. And as a person traveling without my child for that, because that's not our school vacation week, I am like, I do not want to go through Orlando that week. So that got moved back, but then so did ECS. So ECS now is earlier in the month of May next year. And so it's all shifted about 2 weeks, interestingly.
It's you say that too. I mean, a little bit of a footnote, but like when y'all's vacation is and stuff, living in Florida, that time of the year. So like all of March, all of April, because different places that are warm and cold have different spring breaks.
Yep.
Or winter breaks, whatever they call it. So they're coming so we have all these tourists that come into the state all the time. It's okay. Both of them pay our taxes, so that's fine. We don't have an income tax here. Yeah, it's a hassle. I'm unsure, even though it's in my backyard, I'm unsure if I'm going to do the M365 community conference next year or not. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
So you were out a week, and then I think like right when you got back, like that's when I left. I went for a week. So last week, I had one hell of an experience. I mean that in the most positive way. So like there's so you and I we're very similar in the sense that we both are independent / small business owners / consultants / solo, entrepreneurs. And there's a degree of, and some people may not get this, but a lot of people will, I think. There's a degree of a phrase called working on your business and working in your business. And then there's also I'd like to throw something in there as well, which is like focusing on your craft and like what you really do. So like, you and I know each other through the Microsoft 365 development community and Microsoft 365 community as a whole. And so, but it's like, it's still like from the side of like where I am, I've always felt like I have a hard time like relating to other people that have the same style business that I have, in terms of, I embraced it finally a couple of years ago and understood like, oh, I am one of those content creators, the buzzword term that we hear about on YouTube and everything, for like course creation, articles, stuff like that. And once I finally like embraced it, I thought that term was just like classic, like internet, like jargon bullshit. But when I looked a little bit more into it, and I was like, I think that is me. And then I started a little bit more. I'm like, I think it is me. And then I found like other people that were like this in this creator group. And I was able to join, like, it's a paid membership that I'm in, of a small-ish community of like 200 to 300 people who are, they're coaches, they're like professional coaches, they're course creators, they're YouTubers, they're like social media influencers, which I can't stand that term, but that's what it is. They're writers, they're bloggers, they're podcasters, they're vloggers. I mean, you name it. They run communities, all this kind of stuff. So last week I was in Boise, Idaho for 2 events. The first event was brand new. The group that I'm in, the creator group that I'm in, it's called The Lab, by a guy named Jay Klaus. He runs a company called Creator Science. And what we did was, for the people who are at like the top, there's 3 membership tiers, and I'm in one of the top 2 membership tiers. For the people that were in that, we did an in-person retreat. We called it The Lab Offline. It was originally The Lab in real life, but now it's like The Lab Offline. And it was so good for like, it was so good for the soul.
Yeah.
It was like, I've been in this group. I've known these people now for going on 3 years, and just people who understand the challenges, the highs and lows. You know this, so I'm not excluding this, but the extreme highs and lows of like being a small business person, where, you know, the struggles, the constant hustle. It was really, really good. Like, I had like there was 2 or 3 people that I sat down with for about an hour or more, and you just got deep into stuff. It's like it's an incredible experience. So I wrote a little bit about it on LinkedIn, and I'll put a link there in our notes if people want to see like just my experience there. The other thing, the second part of the show, it was really, the thing that was cool about the lab is it was 100% interactive. So there was like very little slides that were more like prompts of an exercise we were doing. Tiny little like snippet was, there was a slide, had 7 bullet points on it, but like the first 2 were like, you know, what's working well in your business, what's not working well. So you took 5 minutes to go through and think about that, write some notes down. We were at these tables with 8 people at each table, little round tables. And then it was, the next 2 questions were, I can't remember what they are off the top of my head, but it was like 2 more things. And then it was 2 more things. And the last one was like, imagine, like, close your eyes and think it's now December 2025 and you've had a killer year. What did you do to get to that killer? What did you do, and what did you stop doing to get there? And it's just one of those things, like, you need to stand in front of the mirror and really ask yourself the hard questions sometimes.
Yeah.
But sometimes you're not even comfortable enough to ask yourself those questions. You might be comfortable enough to ask them and answer them in your head, but you're not even comfortable enough to ask them and answer them out verbally when you're all in the bathroom looking in the mirror. But then to sit there with other people at a table that are all doing, then we all went around, we had 18 minutes for each one, and we just share it. And then people would pepper you. So it was a very like vulnerable, like, you had to be, you got more out of it, the more vulnerable you were, but everything is very much like tight NDA. We don't share like the details of what we talked about. It's just insane. It was so good, like mentally, emotionally draining. And then we had a down day. And then the second part of the week was a traditional conference, not what we're used to in the 365 space, but it was all about for like content creators, run by a company called Kit. And it was a lot of presentations, some big names that some people may know, like the #1 person on LinkedIn, a guy named Chris Donnelly out of the UK, the huge guy on YouTube named Pat Flynn, that runs Smart Passive, and also just for the hell of it, like, created a YouTube channel in addition to his other one that was all about just Pokemon. And he was using it, not using his name at all, but just going through and trying to replicate his success on YouTube with his brand to being something completely different. And let's see if I can replicate and do the same thing over there. And just the behind the scenes stuff was really cool. So
Fascinating.
it was an incredible experience. I walked away with so many ideas and stuff.
Yeah. That's
So
cool.
yeah. Yeah, it was good.
It's neat. It's neat to be able to talk to people outside of your industry too, because we get to be in a little bit of a bubble, which in some ways is really good because there's that aspect of supporting each other through, like we will be doing today, because this is going to be a talk therapy show. But there's also
A ragey talk therapy show.
a little ragey talk therapy. We're here for it. So there's that aspect of it. So there's that support, like, trauma support, but there's also the aspect of you kind of get stuck into, we all know what we know and we don't particularly know what we don't know. And so by connecting with people outside of our bubble, you get insights into things that can help you rethink things. And I think that's a really interesting benefit to doing those types of meetups. I don't have that in my life, but I mean, luckily with the Simpraxis team, we have a lot of viewpoints. And so that does help. And we try to run things as like a democracy, a real democracy, where we all get to vote on what we're going to do. But, it's tough. So that's really cool. What a great thing for you to do for yourself. So I'm really for it. Love it.
It really is. It's really not like, I'll say, how's this for being vulnerable? I think as a small business person in this world, especially when you work remote, you work from home, it can be a really lonely experience when your spouse, your kids, your friends that are in real life locally, they don't really get what you're doing and you just can't explain it. The entire week last week, what was so nice about it is that and even when I go, like when I see you in Seattle and our friends and everything we hang out with, that I don't discount that at all. That's been a huge piece of my life. And I love, there's things that we have that are an unspoken history that we all know that we don't have to rehash. With this, it's kind of like going, I don't have to explain the challenge I'm having with this one thing in my business, because they're like, yep, we've all been there. We're going through it as well. Some been through it. Some have made it through the other side. Some haven't. And it's just, that whole struggle of just like, it's something that's just, it's really special. So it's a nice bond, but yeah. So
totally get it. All right, let's jump into the news. I have one who pinned a bunch, but there's I had some of these too. So, but I'll let you lead with those. But my one is just a little extension. Martin, again, hitting the ground running. This guy did another blog post focused on GitHub Actions, but essentially talking about how he can use that federated identity. We talked about it on the last show to do branch release strategy, and how you can tie the authentication to a branch specifically. So I just wanted to, drop that link in for that blog post that he did, because it's great information. And I love that he's really digging deep into this and going for broke. And now that they made that, that new feature in the Microsoft 365 CLI. So that was my share on that. You've got some, I have to smile at your first one, but why don't you go ahead?
So this is like a low-hanging fruit. I have two like low-hanging fruit things. So first one is that if you've heard of the State of JavaScript survey, or like Stack Overflow does an annual survey, there's this one group, I don't remember who they are, who's behind the scenes for it, but they have launched their State of CSS, Cascading Style Sheets survey for 2025. This survey is now open. They are now collecting responses. I would, if I were you, if you're a web dev, I'd go in there and I would answer the survey. Takes maybe 10, 15, 20, 25 minutes, however long you want to put in there. But what's really cool about it, what I like about this is, while this has nothing to do with our Microsoft 365 world, this is just web dev in general. I like doing these surveys, and then I like going back and looking at, and sometimes taking some notes too, like how I had responded. But when the results come out, they do a really, really good job of cataloging, summarizing, showing good visualizations of where everything is. The reason I like doing this is because it shows me kind of where I am, either in my experience, what I'm using, what I'm not using, and my awareness with the rest of the industry. And that's not to say that you look at it and say, well, I'm missing the boat, or that's validation, I'm in the same spot where everybody else is. But it's nice to kind of take a step back and kind of measure yourself where everybody else is, and going like, is there a blind spot that I'm not aware of? Is this more important than I think it is? So, the people that are like going, I still do Angular and Angular is absolutely awesome. Like going, dude, the world shows that Angular is dying off. Like people aren't using it nearly as much. Or there's this new framework that's really cool. And I'm just like, yeah, but it's like 5 people are really vocal about it because there's only 7 of them that are really doing it. So it's stuff like that I think is really nice. So yeah.
I was going to add to it. One of the things they do that I absolutely love is as you're going through it, they let you bookmark topics that are interesting to you. So I use it similar to the way you use it, but slightly different in that I've mentioned it before. I'll mention him about 1 billion times more because I jokingly call him my right and left hand. Stefan Bauer knows all this stuff, right? Like deeply knows all this stuff. So I use it as a way to like go through and go, the one thing that he and I have to do is transfer his UX vision into actual functioning code. And that handoff is a very small little tenuous string between the two of us. And so the more I understand about what he is going to do or what he can do, the more we can communicate really well. And so I use this to go pin a bunch of CSS properties, functions, APIs that I knew or didn't know about that I need to make sure that I just basically understand. Because when I'm working on something and I'm implementing you never get it 100% right when you're building something, right? And so when I'm implementing the actual code to hook everything up and I go, God, this would be a little better if it did this thing a little differently. And I know, at least on the surface about a lot of things, I can ping him and go, hey, I was working on this bit and it's not functioning quite the way I think we want it to. What about that thing I heard about? Is that a place where we could use this here? 9 times out of 10, I'm completely off base, but it starts a good conversation where he's like, no, but you know what we could do, blah, blah, blah. And then so we're getting that, that back and forth. So I use it to keep myself educated. This is what I tell non-devs about listening to dev information too. It's not necessarily so that you can go out be a great dev. It's so that you know what devs can do. Because if you know what they can do, then you can have a better conversation. So I like to think of it that way.
Yeah.
So that's
I agree. Yes, I definitely suggest everyone who's listening, go jump in the show notes, go take the survey, the CSS 2025 survey. They'll do other surveys later in the year. There's one for like web frameworks. There's one for JavaScript. When they come out, I think it's in our best interest to go ahead and do it. And then you can get an email alert when the updates come out. And I'm sure you and I, when these surveys come out, these would be great things for us to cover on the show as well. So
yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Definitely do that.
Rapid fire on a few things. Last week, there was a massive Google Cloud Platform outage on June the 12th. It was pretty painful. So this was painful for me, at least. I'll explain why in a minute. So in late May, Google added a new quota policy to a policy check feature to something they call service control. That's a regional service for managing API policies and quotas. In this rollout, the new code path wasn't triggered during the rollout, which they do a same kind of a phased rollout, like what Facebook does, M365 does, all those rings and stuff. But it wasn't the code path that was rolled out was not triggered during the rollout, which meant that there was not like a really good check to what happened. About 2 weeks later, which is last week on June the 12th, around what is that? 7:45 on the East Coast, 7:45 in the morning on the East Coast. The policy update with blank fields triggered this untested code path, causing the service control libraries to crash globally due to a null pointer exception and a lack of error handling and feature flag protection. So, ouch. They detected it within 2 minutes. The root cause was identified, and they had implemented a code path to basically hit a red button, but they had to roll that out. That took about 40 minutes, which restored service in most of the regions. But in some of the larger regions, like specifically their US Central 1 region, recovery took a lot longer because they triggered a thundering herd experience, which basically means that when it comes back, the infrastructure, everything came back online, all of these queued up requests all came flooding in, and it caused infrastructure was overloaded. And also because they lacked some part of an internal exponential backoff to kind of slow things down as things came back online. So ultimately everything came back online, but it took longer for some things to come back online. Personally for me, because I was in the middle of a conference and I was using Notion, which is my preferred way of like having like a second brain and taking notes and everything. I also use Notion AI. So Notion's like an equivalent to OneNote for those who don't know what that is. Or Loop. Loop was basically a UX copy of Notion. They stole the entire UI from what Notion was doing. I also use Notion AI, which was think like Teams meetings where it does like live transcription and generated notes. That's what Notion does as well, but not just for Teams. It does it for everything, including like in-person meetings. And I've got like major gaps in my notes and I couldn't figure out why. I thought it was the internet connection. It wasn't the internet connection. It was the actual internet. So it's a pain in the ass, but at any rate, so that's the update on the GCP update. I got a few Azure ones too that I'll throw out there. Actually today, we got a couple breaking news things today. Microsoft and Satya announced comprehensive sovereign solutions empowering European organizations. So they have this new thing called the Microsoft Sovereign Cloud, or a newish thing that's designed for offering the most competitive set of sovereign solutions for customers across the sovereign public cloud, sovereign private cloud, and national partner clouds. So what the announcement is a bunch of new offerings that bring digital sovereignty for all European orgs in the public cloud and unlock new ways to run private sovereign clouds as well. So like for the public cloud, they have this thing called Data Guardian that ensures that all remote access by their engineers to their systems that store and process customer data in Europe is both approved and monitored by European resident personnel in real time and logged in tamper logger. They have external key management for customer controlled encryption as well. And they also have a private cloud, sovereign private cloud offering, which includes Microsoft 365 Local that brings together their productivity software into Azure local environments that can run entirely at on your own customers managed and run data centers. With full control on security, compliance, and governance. So it's just a big commitment for Microsoft to be less US focused in that sense and be more sensitive to what the European Union and European countries have for their setup. So that's big. Another one is, this is a kind of an Azure thing, kind of a Intra thing, kind of a SharePoint Online thing. This is a message center item that is, let's see, what is it? Message center 1089315. Don't stop your car and try and write that down while you're driving. Don't worry, we got show notes. You'll be in there. You're going to have to reshare all of your sharing links for external users after you enable the SharePoint integration with Microsoft Intra B2B. If you're like, what the hell? I'm like, yeah, I get it. Don't worry. That won't be the only what the hell option in this episode. We'll have more.
That's
in fact,
the least of the what the hells.
In what the hell is kind of like that's a baseline. We're going to just jump to a WTF and then a WTE. ATAM. Yeah. I'll come back to that in just a bit. Let's see, what else did I have? Oh, another thing, this is coming from the Azure Search guys. They introduced a multi-vector and scoring profile integration with semantic ranking in Azure AI Search. As the search experiences become increasingly sophisticated, handling like complex and multimodal data and maintaining precise relevance, that's going to be crucial. So these new capabilities address a common pain points. So on the multi-vector field support, that's going to help you manage detailed, multi-model, and segmented content more efficiently. And scoring profiles, that integration with semantic ranking is going to ensure consistent relevance throughout your entire search pipeline. So big things there. Okay, so that's my Azure stuff. I'm going to do a little bit of 365 that's going to slide right into the meat and potatoes of the entree that we have this week for everybody. So if you think that was your appetizer we just went through, this is kind of like the cleansing of the palate, although I think it's going to dirty the palate until we jump into the real meat potatoes and the entree. So first of all, Microsoft they're changing the way it delivers M365 app updates. This is a subtle change. Microsoft is no longer overlapping support cycles for the semi-annual channel preview. So this means that enterprises that are using the semi-annual enterprise channel now need to perform at least 2 deployments per year to stay in support. That is up from the previous just 1 that you had to do. The semi-annual channel will stay active primarily for headless setups like servers, but otherwise organizations will need to move faster. I've actually worked with many startups that are actually headless, or sure, at least seems like that. So that's a lot of stuff here.
We're spicy today.
All right, here we go. Now we're getting on the roll. So first up, I wrote an article about this last week that's gotten a lot of attention. SharePoint Online is rolling out support for content security policy, although they call it something totally different.
Of course they do.
So
what's their name, Andrew?
Trusted Script Sources. What the? One person at Microsoft knows what that is, or now a bunch of articles do, and they're like, what?
Is it? Oh, whatever.
What this is, CSP is a web thing. It is not a Microsoft thing. It is a web thing that's been around for a very long time. Microsoft is just 20 years catching up. Not 20 years, but probably, but still a lot. What this is that in SharePoint Online, or really just anything, is that or any web server, when it loads up, when a browser requests a page from a web server, the server can respond with obviously the content, but there's also headers in the GET request. And some of those headers can include something called the content security policy. There's a couple different headers with this. I'm going to keep it a little on the light side. If you want more details, I'll give you a link in the show notes. But effectively what this does is it says, hey, browser, when the page goes to load a script file, and you can do this also for images and CSS, but the important part is JavaScript. When the browser goes to load a JavaScript file, make sure that the URL that it's loading the JavaScript from is allowed. And here is the list of domains that are allowed to be pulled in. So for example, if you have, let's just cut straight to how this impacts SharePoint Online and SharePoint Framework stuff today. So today, without CSP, I could have a SharePoint Framework web part that pulls in a JavaScript file from a CDN or from either my CDN or a reputable CDN like the JS Deliver, or I could pull in a JavaScript file from really anywhere, Dropbox or whatever. With CSP, by default, you will have a set of any of the domains that are used to serve up JavaScript files for SharePoint Online, which includes the domain that you're currently in on your tenant. So any custom solution where your script files are included in your package when you deploy them, they go into this client-side assets library that is in the site that you're currently in. Those will be just fine. But if you pull anything from an outside URL, you're now going to have to go in and add a reference to it in something called the trusted script sources, AKA it's just the CSP settings for your SharePoint Online tenant. And you have to make sure that that's listed in there. Otherwise, the browser will not load that script and it will log an error both in the console and it will log it inside of Purview. Now, this is rolling out now. There's different degrees of when it's supposed to be done. If you look at the Message Center article, it sure implies that everything is done now, but that's BS because I still don't see it in a few of my tenants. But just know, like right now, this is not being enforced. It is being implemented, and it will report violations of CSP, of the CSP policy, but the browser will still load them. So if you have a script that you're loading from an external location and you've done nothing to the trusted script sources, it will still load and work today as a recording in June of 2025, but it will still log it inside of the console, the browser's console, the JavaScript console, and it'll also log it as a CSP violation inside of Microsoft Purview in the auditing solution.
If you're using that.
If you're using that, yeah. So it'll be able to log it in there. It is not being enforced. So it looks like they're going to start enforcing it in Q4 of this year, calendar year, but it remains to be seen. Me personally, I got some gripes about this. First of all, it shouldn't be called TSS, Trusted Script Sources. It should be called CSP settings because that's what everybody's going to be looking for in the admin center. Second of all, it does do one thing where it will let the administrator know that there is a URL where, first of all, overall, CSP is a good thing. SharePoint Online should.
I was just going to, yeah.
It should be doing it from the get-go. It should also, I think it should be set up the same way we use with API permissions. It should create requests. When you deploy a solution, it should be a request that something needs to be approved or denied, and then it would work or not work. And the argument that I got from Microsoft on this is, well, yeah, but if you don't approve it, it's not going to work. And I'm like, and how is that different from your API permission request? It should work the exact same way. You should both do the same thing, or should neither one of them do the same? Neither one of them do that thing.
Could not agree more.
Okay.
Could not agree more.
So I've got three-headed Hydra on this one. When I stand on my soapbox, I got three podiums. One of them, stop calling it trusted sources, call it CSP settings or configuration or whatever. Second podium on my soapbox is that it should make it more like a permission-based, a request kind of a thing. My last one is it automatically catches URLs that you're using to different, to outside domains, but only if you've gone into the right manifest JSON file and told it not to include my script files inside of my SharePoint solution package, my SPFx, and I'm going to deploy them separately to some other CDN. Okay, cool. But what about everything that we're listing inside of the externals property or array inside of the config file, which is what or the config.json file, which is what we commonly use, what most people use to reference things like jQuery or other like moment.js or data. Why aren't those listed? So
Yep. Yeah,
I wrote an article about this and a guy said, hey, I found something, here's this, and I'm working on a little update. So if on a way to go through and to make your build toolchain a little bit better with this, but still they're rolling this out as like a V1 feature and have tested, in my opinion, this is a beta. So at least they're out of,
I mean, it's at best a beta, but it's also like incredibly confusing, and it's like almost more harmful than good because it's so confusing and it has so many holes in it, right? Like because of all of that, it's just setting up for nobody to want it or use it or want to abandon because it's not at least a V1 that's well thought out. It's just very frustrating.
It is. It's very frustrating. It's poorly implemented, poorly rolled out.
Yep.
I've got an article on it. It was in the message center for the last month or so. It was not picked up by really anybody. I wrote an article about it, I wrote my own article about it, my thoughts on it. There's also an official article in the SharePoint dev docs because I wrote that one and published it too about how this whole thing works. But that one's not opinionated. That's just because it's just docs. But Julie, that's not all. The last bit of news is what's going to transition us right into our meat and potatoes. And that is, hey, guess what, SharePoint Framework developers? Field Customizers just got deprecated. Oh, mic drop. I'm going to switch off the news now, Julie.
Yeah, I am so angry. We both saw this morning, first thing. Ironically, someone I work with very closely, Bill Cameron, literally pinged me while we were getting ready for the episode to start and going, did anybody know about field customers being deprecated? I mean, he has a good point that they've had a hard life, but the reason they've had a hard life, here's what I want to say about this. The reason they've had a hard life is because the other thing that is not something we typically cover on this show, but Microsoft, in their infinite wisdom a while ago, on the not supported by a vast majority of the MVP community, decided that the Microsoft Lists solution, that is sort of a separate implementation of Lists that's its own app in Microsoft 365, should obviously take over the SharePoint Lists UX. And so essentially, we have document libraries and lists in SharePoint. And they're the same thing. The difference with a library is it's document-centric, and with a list, it's an list item-centric, but they both have metadata. They're both sort of based on the same principles. So to take the UX of the lists and then change it to the Microsoft Lists UX, well, nobody did any testing. And of course, all of the SharePoint Framework extensibility for that you could do with lists broke. And they've been going in like this massive crazy circle trying to fix it forever because they are so hell-bent on using the Microsoft Lists UX inside of SharePoint. Meanwhile, nobody's talking about the fact that that's a horrible user experience because document libraries and lists live side by side. And they essentially do very, very similar things. One's just documents, the other's list items, and there's no document as the center. But they're the same things, and they have the same features in general. And so for those two user experiences to be completely different is just dumb. Like, there's no other way there's like no nice thing to put over the top of it. It's just dumb that they're different. And so that the fact that they did it and broke all the SharePoint Framework stuff is just maddening at a level that's hard. And it was supposed to fall back to the old SharePoint UX. It didn't successfully. It was just a whole mess. So I suspect this is coming from, for whatever reason, those two groups couldn't get together and make it work effectively. And so now they've decided, guess what? We've made a contract for you. And this is the thing that makes me so friggin' angry. The one thing we've been telling people is SharePoint Framework is the way to extend the platform. Don't do DOM manipulation. Don't do injection of scripts. Don't do any of those things. Microsoft has made this contract with you. This is the way that you can extend the platform. And field customers were part of that contract, and they are breaking that promise so fundamentally for who the hell knows what reason, but I don't care what it is. There's no good one. This is absolutely unacceptable. put it aside that I use this all the friggin' time for my clients when we do advanced customizations, because, and I know that, you think about this differently, but when we are extending the platform, we are trying to help meet users where they are in their business journey, right? So they are trying to do a business process and they are using the SharePoint platform, the Microsoft 365 platform, and we are trying to extend that platform to meet their needs. And by taking this away, you've essentially broken a huge portion of those business process solutions that we built for customers out there and our ISVs have built for their products. I'm absolutely livid. It's a darn good thing people aren't close to me, because some necks would have been wrung over this one.
It's a good thing your office is closed too, for the kids and the husband's sake.
Yes.
We'll be doing like a welfare check in just a few minutes. Okay. This is irritating as hell. For multiple reasons. I agree with what you said. That field customizers are, so first of all, field customizers, they're not like dead today. They've been deprecated.
Yeah.
And
Let's talk about what's really happening. Yes.
And I think that the actual news of it, let me just pull up, double check really quick, checking my notes. Yep. So they are deprecated and they will be retired on June 30th of 2026. So over a year from now. So you got a year to go through and get everything all sorted.
Except that assumes you can.
Well, it assumes you can. And they even said, so in the message center, so just if you guys are, keeping track and everybody's doing like some AI generated notes on this whole thing, we'll have links in the show notes. It's message center ID 1094051. SharePoint Framework 1514. Yeah, Friday the 13th. Oh, I missed that. It was Friday the 13th. Organizations should transition to column formatting for visual customizations. That's the declarative stuff. Other SPFx extensions will continue to function. Well, kinda. That's kind of been a shitty story with the new list implementation and command set extensions. There will be no option to extend the use of field customizers beyond the retirement date. So here's my issue with this. Microsoft released field customizers back in, I think it was May of 2017. The SharePoint framework released in end of January, beginning of February 2017. Then they added in the ability, and they showed it at Build, or at least they released in GA later that summer of the same year, of the three core types of extensions: app customizers, command set extensions, and field customizers. When they released the field customizers one, the whole way that this stuff works is you basically write a JavaScript file that is going to get called on when you attach it to a cell, or when you attach it to a column in a list. That column, whenever it goes to render data on each row, it will call your library that will give you the ability to grab data from context about the current item that you're on. You can get data from other fields on the current item. And then you can write to the div that represents that cell for that column in that row, which means you can render out anything you want to render to, like a pie chart, a spark line, or something like that. When they released it, they said that this only works in the read-only experience, but they were going to follow up and actually add it to the write-only experience, except they never did. They half-assed it. And yet again, another thing with the SharePoint framework, or another thing with Microsoft, they released something as V1. It clearly is not ready, and they never touch it again, thinking that it's just fine. And then I wouldn't be surprised. We haven't seen this yet, but I'd love to hear Microsoft's reasoning on this. And I wouldn't be surprised if, number one, nobody's really using this. Well, it's because you half-assed it, number one. The other reason they would maybe say is like going, well, because, we have another way of doing this, and we have this way of doing it. So you have the list form customizations, and then you have this other way using field customizers. So we're standardizing on just one different option here. Yeah, okay, give me a break. There's like 10 different ways to do so many different things inside SharePoint Online and Microsoft 365 stuff that you can't say we're standardizing to one, because you've broken that rule so many times in the past.
But I call bullshit, because this takes them. Because that's the reason. If that's the reason, this doesn't cover it. Here's my problem. I use field customizers to actually extend the UX. So I might do a field customizer that when you click on the field, it goes out, checks to see if you've already favorited that tool in your We talked about saving data in OneDrive, in those app folders or whatever. I have a field customizer out there with a client where essentially it renders the field and says, have you favorited this ID? Oh, you haven't? When you click the field, it goes out and uses JavaScript to go add that ID into that JavaScript file, in the JSON file, excuse me. I can't do that with a command set. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'd have to it's a completely different user experience. So no longer will my button function. They'd have to select the item, do the pull down and then say, oh, I want to favorite this. That's bullshit. Yep. I'll give you one that's even worse. Now I want to be able to have a button that says, oh, you get to approve this thing. That is all based on JavaScript, whether I show you something in there to click on or not. I can't do that with the column formatter. It's not possible. So they are taking functionality away, and I don't have a way to get around that. That second one, it's now undoable. I'm sorry, person. You paid me money to build you a solution, and I can't even fix it. There's no way around it.
Yep. I agree with everything you just said about that. It's frustrating because, look, from the big picture, this erodes a level of trust with people who are going to choose to build stuff on the SharePoint framework. I would still tell people today, we don't have too much of a, you said earlier that you and I have a little bit of a difference of opinion on this. I don't think we're really that far apart on this. I wrote about this on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago, but after we recorded our last show, that I said, the more content that I consume from build, the more impressed I am at what Azure's doing, and the more disappointed I am at what Microsoft 365 is doing and not doing. And it's stuff like this. I'm losing confidence in them being a development platform. Or being a platform that I could build solutions on. I'm getting closer to just kind of telling people look, we have stuff in 365 to customize and extend the Microsoft Collaboration and Productivity Suite, being Microsoft 365. With that being said, you need to think twice about just about everything you're going to build and say, do I trust this? Is this going to, and you can't read in the future, right? You can't sit there and do too much, being too much of a Nostradamus and figure out knowing exactly what's going to happen, other than stuff's going to get canceled. With the M365, they have their own Department of Government Efficiency, their own Doge initiative, it seems. They're canceling stuff, they're closing stuff, or retiring stuff left and right. A lot of it, I understand the whole security first initiative. You're locking things down that weren't really secure. This one, don't tell me this wasn't secure, because this is just JavaScript that's running to update a div on a page. That is no different than how a web part works. So anything that's coming with an extension, I'd always be like, think about what you're doing. Don't be too extensive in this, because just you gotta decide how best you can really trust this stuff. It's just disappointing. The other thing that's really disappointing about this, and I know this is a little bit of inside baseball with everybody, but a lot of times when these things are coming, then they will talk to their MVP community and they will be like, hey, this is coming, and they'll try and get some feedback on it before they end up rolling it out. Just like you're getting, hits from, I think it was Bo is the one that, Bo Cameron, that reached out to you this morning about this. We literally were putting our show notes together when he reached out to you. I jump over and look at my email real quick, and I'm going, oh, look, there's people in my Voitanos Learn community, my students, who are asking what the heck? I guess I know what I'm going to write an article about this afternoon, but it's just we had no idea this was coming either. So if none we're sharing here, there's no what else do you guys know that we haven't heard of yet? We don't know, because there's nothing. As of right now, we don't know anything.
Totally blindsided.
And this sits on top of the other retirements that are happening at about the same time next year. You've got, and all the stuff was announced at the end of 2023 throughout 2024. Microsoft is retiring Azure ACS from Microsoft 365. That has already happened for new tenants. New tenants don't have this turned on. They stopped having that turn on in November of 2024. It will be fully removed. Anything that leverages it will be dead on April the 2nd, 2026. They also are, as part of that, these first three I'm going to mention are all kind of intertwined. They are also killing the SharePoint 2013 workflows. Those all new tenants that were created after April 2024 or after April 2nd, 2024, they have had this service turned off. If you have a SharePoint 2013 workflow, it will be it will not run after April the 2nd, 2026. And then there also SharePoint add-ins. Those are getting shut down. New tenants, all the services that support those new tenants had not had those services enabled since November 1st of 2024. However, they will be fully shut down on 2nd of 2026. And then the last but not least is SharePoint isolated web parts. They keep talking about the fact that they're coming up with a replacement for this. They've never shared it. They just kind of said, we're working on something, but they've been saying that now for nearly a year and a half. Those have been disabled on new tenants since April the 2nd, 2025. So just like a month or two, and they will be fully shut down after April the 2nd, 2026. So those are SharePoint add-ins are being killed along with Azure ACS support and SharePoint workflows. I understand SharePoint 2013 workflows. Those all make sense. They needed to shut that down. That is the old way of building stuff. That is not the way that it is recommended going forward or really sustainable. So those are things you need to start working to start customizing those solutions. Hey, I've got courses on that. And the SharePoint Framework isolated web parts, that is another one that they are shutting down, which means that you won't be able to have a web part that has its own custom domain where you can have security permissions and scopes scoped just to your solution, which otherwise they're scoped to the entire tenant, which is always a surprise for many customers. It's apparently April of 2026 and now June. That is going to be the great shutdown. And SharePoint Framework and SharePoint Online stuff.
I mean, it's just a lot of news around things getting taken away. And I think the take-home message is just the erosion of trust, as we sort of said. It's this latest one, really bad. All right, we have been ranting for quite a while. Let's uplift ourselves a little bit, but not really. AC, your pick is first, since this is my lead show. Your pick first.
So my pick is something I watched recently on Netflix. I'm a bit of a history buff. I've always, for the longest time, I've wanted to go back and find, like, can I get a real accounting of the Vietnam War, the United States and Vietnam, that happened back in the 50s and 60s and shoot, I just forgot when it was. It's around the 60s. I think it's 60s. Yeah, it was in the 60s. That's right. It was in the 60s, like 65, 66, 67, 68 ish, somewhere around there. Netflix has a really good documentary on it. It's called Turning Point Vietnam War, that I watched. I didn't realize that a lot of it started based on religion, and with Catholics and Buddhism and Vietnam and like religious strife and everything. It was really good. It was really educational. It's exactly what I was looking for. And I'm a big believer of the whole phrase that we've all heard before, which is if you're those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. I found it to be really, really good. So I definitely, I would recommend it.
That's an interesting choice. And I'm not surprised that was religious. I don't know that. History is not something that I personally follow a lot, but I'm not surprised by that information coming out. I will go back to my chefy stuff, maybe a little uplifting. We talked about, I think it was actually the last show, my pick was the Netflix show Chef's Table Legends, with 4 of the chefs that they picked sort of for this Legends thing. And Condé Nast, which is a known sort of high-end, hoity-toity probably, travel and food publication. Yeah. They got the 4 chefs from the Chef's Table Legend together and had them go around and talk about their favorite places to eat around the world. It's like maybe almost a half an hour long, but it's really fun listening to them talk about their favorite places to eat and some of the fun picks that they have. Like, some of them are certainly high-end restaurants, but some of them aren't. And it was kind of funny to hear, like, Chef Keller say that a chicken and waffle place is like his favorite place to go in LA. I was like, all right, did not see that coming. Anyway, so it's a really good one. We'll include that in the show notes for anybody who's like me and likes to watch that kind of thing. Great picks from all around the world. So that's my pick for today.
I've absolutely loved that. I'm halfway through the Chef Tables Legends. I did the Jamie Oliver one, and I forgot the other one, but the Spanish guy, Jose Andres. Yeah. He's interesting too. I'm halfway through that one as well.
Ron Howard did a great documentary with him, Jose Andres. That's a really, really, really good watch. I'll try to come up with it and we'll put it in the show notes too, because that's a hard one. Ron Howard as a director, but they became really close friends around this World Central Kitchen thing. And so that documentary is absolutely like, woof, big. So
I had not seen that. I haven't seen that, but this one I thought, so great pick on this one. This will be a fun follow, fast follow for me.
It's a fun follow. It's a fun one.
Cool. Awesome. Well, hey, everybody. Well, I guess
I'm going to go get a drink.
10:30 in the morning. My coffee's almost empty. I'm going to need a lot more coffee today. I'm just not allowed to put anything in it.
Yeah, no kidding.
I know I'm going to let you do our wrap up in just a minute, but I do want to ask, hey, if everybody, we would love to know what you think about this whole like deprecation stuff, specifically around like field customizers for the SharePoint framework. Let us know, reach out, let us know and reach out, like do it through our LinkedIn, do it through where you'll find this video on YouTube as well. Drop a comment on there, drop a comment on LinkedIn where we publish this episode as well, or any of the audio feeds. We'd love to hear what you think about this and to kind of get your input on this as well. I think that these kinds of things, that when Microsoft makes these decisions, and a lot of times there's no feedback. There are times when your feedback actually can make a difference and can impact some of the stuff. When they rolled out those changes for lists and they completely broke the
command set, field sets, and field set customizers.
Field set, yeah. When that field customizer stuff, when they went through and they broke that stuff, they rolled it back, and then they came back and they rolled it back, but they also implemented a thing going, okay, if you've got these extensions already installed, you will get the old experience. And if you don't have them installed, you're going to get the new experience. And we're going to work on getting the new experience to support the extensions that we didn't test for, because we all work for this. They all work for the same company, but apparently they don't know how to talk to each other because their scorecards are so siloed. Sorry guys over in Redmond, but it's really freaking obvious on how you guys work. And it's really annoying to your customers. But it's just, that kind of stuff, it helps. Your feedback really helps. So hopefully we're driving a little bit of awareness to this, and maybe Julie and I are just making a big mountain out of a molehill, but
maybe nobody cares but me. That's not the case.
I give a shit.
All right. Well, and on that note, thank you everybody for joining us today. We appreciate it. And until next time, thank you. Did you like this episode? Please like and share it with your friends. We are on YouTube, Blue Sky, and LinkedIn. All the links are in the video description. If you have a question, head to codedeploygo.live where you can send it in. Also, sign up for our mailing list on our site at codedeploygo.live to learn about future episodes, opportunities for listeners, and get the show notes from each episode sent straight to your inbox. We'll be back with another episode in 2 weeks.